So good news, we actually have some good news. But the good news is in the long run. Short term, the devastating results of what could happen very soon, well, they're devastating. It is bad news. So I want to address what's going on and how two major events are potentially going to cause an economic slowdown. Because again, we have to see an economic slowdown in order to see inflation fall. Now, what am I talking about? Well, let's address that. Now, here are the two major events that are happening right now. First, there's a vote coming on Monday. This vote on Monday could determine the start of a railroad strike, or they may prevent the strike. That's the kind of the good news. The second main event is what the Federal Reserve just said yesterday. Now, I will address that in a minute. But let's first talk about the first big event, since this will come sooner than the Federal Reserve's next FOMC meeting that comes in December. Now, on Monday the 21st, we are going to see the two largest railroad unions. They will announce their members' votes. Now, here's the thing. If the tentative agreement is accepted, then there likely will not be a railroad strike. And the reason I say likely is because there are other unions that have already rejected the deal. So they would need to accept the deal. All 12 members have to agree and accept it, or else there could be a railroad strike. Now, if they reject the proposal, then the threat of a strike would halt about 30% of the nation's freight. Now, on Monday, we're going to know what roughly 50% of the rail industry's 115,000 workers want. Do they want to accept a 24% wage increase, in addition to a $5,000 bonus, in exchange for only a few changes to their working schedule and paid time off? Or will they want to renegotiate like they've been doing over the past 2 years? And keep this in mind, they've been negotiating on this exact tentative agreement for over 2 years. And it didn't come until finally President Biden created a committee to help negotiate and broker this deal. But again, they are not brokering the deal in exchange for the union. They're working with the union and the railroads, and they're the middleman. This is creating a big issue. Now, how does this impact the American people? And what does this have to do with the Federal Reserve? Well, here's what I can tell you. And if this is confusing, I completely understand, because this is where things are going. If a strike is avoided, then this means the supply chain won't be disrupted. That's good news for the American people, because this keeps prices somewhat in check. It's not going to lower prices. It doesn't mean prices are going to surge. It just keeps them in check. Now, if we do see a strike, then this will likely send prices on all products surging. They'll go to the moon. But, and again, this is troubling when 60% of Americans are still living paycheck to paycheck at this current time. And this would not be a good outcome if prices start to rise once again. But according to economists, here is the unfortunate part about not going on strike. The Federal Reserve wants to see pain. They need to see an increase in unemployment. They're pushing for less spending amongst the American people in a time when the American people normally spend more money because it's the holiday shopping season. And the Federal Reserve, they need to see wage growth completely stop. Now, one of the fastest ways to see this happen, according to experts, is if we see the railroad union go on strike, because it would disrupt the entire economy. Reports last indicated that we could see a loss of about $2 billion per day. However, experts anticipate this would be much greater than just $2 billion per day. $2 billion is actually too low. Now, if the railroads do not go on strike, this is the opposite side, okay? So if the railroads do go on strike, it would completely disrupt the economy, $2 billion daily loss. That would hurt, but that would also cause, again, short-term prices would go up. But as the American people cannot spend the money because prices are so high, they stop spending, and guess what? It crashes the economy. That's what it would do. But again, on the flip side, if the railroads don't go on strike, which I personally hope they do not go on strike because I understand what would happen as a result of a strike, then the Fed will need to keep raising rates to slow down inflation. And according to the St. Louis Fed president, James Bullard, he said, and I quote, "The policy rate is not yet in a zone that may be considered sufficiently restrictive." Now, what does that mean? Simply means that we have to keep raising rates because it's not going to restrict people enough. It's not considered sufficiently restrictive. He also went on to add, the federal funds rate of 5 to 7% range would be better suited for this current market and this economy. We are not there. We are not yet at 5%. We're definitely not at 7%. But can you just imagine what a 7% federal funds rate would do? Businesses would stop hiring people, which they kind of already have. Layoffs would increase at a much faster rate. The American people would stop spending money. Credit card debt would surge because people would have to put stuff on their credit cards. But with interest rates rising, we're not going to be able to pay those. And then you look at housing. Housing is a huge, huge industry. If we see the federal funds rate go up to 7%, could we see the 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 10%? Yeah, according to housing experts, it is a possibility that we could see housing go up, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage go up to 10%. That should, and I say should, not will, that should crash the housing market. And if it crashes the market, guess what? Realtors are impacted, construction workers are impacted, appraisers, inspectors, insurance, right? And then on top of all that, what if we're not building? What if we're not buying new properties? What if we're not, improving on properties? And we can't raise taxes, right? This is where everything just comes crashing down. And this is why some are saying that these two events are major. And one of these is going to cause an economic slowdown. But which one? But again, the good news is in the short term, it's going to be bad. But the long term, this should get our economy back on track, should get people back to work, and things would go back to normal. However, we don't know if this would take 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. We have no idea. So that right there is a somewhat bad news. But that is what we know at this time. As always, as I know more, I promise, I'll come back on and share all latest news and updates. Again, just want to thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.